Talent. Raw, undeniable talent. The kind that doesn't seem to be around as much in these days of instant pop stars. Or maybe it is around, and we're just not looking in the right places. My name is Andrew Shapter, and my brother John, a musician and lifelong music fanatic, passed away in 2004. In our last conversation, he shared with me his concerns that the music industry had abandoned both musicians and fans. His words stuck with me for some time. My friend Joel lost his sister, who was also a musician. And as we discussed my brother's concerns, we decided to go look for some answers. We knew it wouldn't be easy since neither of us had any connections. We're not industry professionals, we're simply music fans. We would have to find answers from all the right people the hard way. And for more than a year, our small crew traveled back and forth from coast to coast, talking to hundreds of music fans, music journalists, and mostly to musicians. Some of them very well known and others not at all, but all of them inspiring in their own way. This is the story of our search for answers, and this is what we found.
Music has been the language of our culture. Words and sounds that come from the street and the barrio, from fields and churches, from coffee shops to arenas. Our music defines us as Americans. This fertile land of immigrants, slaves, and dreamers has created more forms and styles of music than any country before it.
That's one of the things that makes American music such an important part of our culture and has changed music around the world, is that the roots of blues and jazz and the thread line in particular of Black African-American contribution in terms of the blues, spiritual, gospel, jazz, bebop, swing, what's ended up being hip-hop and rap and rock and roll is all traced back to a profoundly American experience.
Whether a song of passion or pain, a voice of patriotism or a scream of protest, American music has never been bound by category or cowed by rules. Our rich and often tumultuous history has meant a continuous reinvention of who we are, expressed through our music.
It's always the thing that you can create with one instrument that comes and knocks the big conceited idea down, and it happens every so often. I mean, I suppose some people want to tell you that rock and roll did that in the mid-50s and replaced kind of this other music which was for the older people.
As one musical form emerged on our cultural dance floor, another cut into the fray, determined to make its unique voice heard. Blues howled and boomed. The powerful and articulate jazz stepped onto the floor, and everyone took notice. Rock and roll had been crisscrossing the nation in a dusty van with country and western, and they too joined the party, eager to show off the steps that they'd both learned from gospel. The dancers all parted when the loud and rebellious punk arrived, and the dance floor heaved again as hip-hop, the loudest and flashiest guest yet, arrived on the scene with a slam and a thump heard around the world.
Hip-hop rules the world right now, from Japan to Antarctica. It's everybody bobbing their head.
American music is young and old. It is clean and sophisticated, and then dirty, gritty, and raw. It is all around us, and it is who we are. Real American music is created by a diverse group of artists who move us with their thoughts, their voices, and their instruments. Their brutal honesty pierces the walls of our impersonal world. They keep us company. They teach us, they grieve with us, they celebrate with us, and sometimes they even save our lives.
There was a time in America where it didn't matter how rich you were. You had to have some kind of affiliation with poor people. I think that the greatest music comes from an emotional identification with those that do not have. The new philosophy is everything that I need in my life should be no more than 1 mile away from where I live. So everybody I'm around is just like me. And that, my friend, is not music's friend.
And that's where I think that probably tomorrow is going to go to. It's going to go back, not back, but it's going to go back to the fact that we've ignored the very thing that made the song. And that was heart. I don't know that they have that heart like they used to have, like it used to be, where there is heart. That feeling, that great feeling, to put that into it, it's something that's so important and missing so much.
She has a lot of controversy about her voice. Was it good tonight?
Yeah, it was awesome. She has the best voice out of anybody else that can see live. So we got to meet her back there.
Was she nice?
Yeah, she's very nice.
Do you buy all her albums?
Well, yeah, she only has one out.
Well, what would y'all tell Ashley Simpson if she sees this?
That she rocks and that she's cool and that who cares what everybody else thinks, but she's awesome. And I love her hairstyle, definitely. She's real.
What other music do y'all like? Do y'all know who Bob Dylan is?
No.
You don't know who he is? I mean, he used to inspire people to like drive to Washington and burn their bras. Did she inspire you to do anything?
No.
I think that looks have always mattered, but they really matter in the kind of muscle that gets behind promoting who becomes a multi-million-dollar seller. You have to have a certain look.
Ever since MTV arrived in our living rooms, there has been an inordinate amount of emphasis on beauty and youth and appearance, none of which enters our consciousness through our ears.
Right now, this industry is is all about youth.
One thing that clearly was dangerous about video was just setting an expectation of performance beyond what artists were able to deliver.
There's so many people now who release an album without never having really performed because they made a video, and now there's a demand to see them. I mean, that's insane.
And the reality is that superficiality is in, and depth and quality is kind of out.
I remember a time when it was just old blind Stevie Wonder and Donna Ross and Shaka Khan and Gladys Knight and the Pips. It was about the music, but it's about the youth and how it looks. It's a whole package now because we're in the age of video. Before video, because video killed a radio star. You could be ugly in the motherfucker and be great.
Sex has always sold, and beautiful people have always been at the helm of pop music. But in the 70s and in the late 60s and 70s, you could be a singer-songwriter and not be cosmetically, George Clooney to be able to have a hit record.
You gotta be able to get on stage and rock, and MTV has provided a platform, an avenue to get to stardom without having had to do that much.
I'd rather listen to somebody that's in their 30s or 40s or 50s or 60s or 70s that I know has gone through some shit, singing and playing and doing instruments, and I'd rather hear that than somebody that's 20. You haven't lived. And if you're 20 and pretty, what are you complaining about? At last? No. What are we talking about?
Today, Ray Charles would not get a shot. Today, Stevie Wonder would not get a shot. They're blind.
But if you were not 100% gorgeous or really interesting looking enough, I don't think you could have a career in this business.
First of all, you need to get you some breast implants. What's hot is the butt implant. If you really want to rock somebody's world and make it in this business, you better get you an ass implant. Get you some calf implants too if you're gonna be wearing them stilettos and shit. You need to get your hair long if you can. If you can get your scalp cut off and get you a whole nother scalp. And you got to wear stilettos. You got to, I don't care how old you are, 12, 11, you got to do it. Create your own publicity, do some hoe shit, Do it, do some hoe shit. If you are a woman, you have to tongue kiss another woman, and if you want to make it, you got to do it. You have to. Just be butt naked somewhere. Butt naked with glitter on you in a beeper. I mean, that's the one I thought of, was I figured, somebody else can do that.
Is creating a pop star as easy as applying a formula? We decided to gather the required ingredients and conduct an experiment.
I like music that people write themselves. I like real music that it's like honest and believable. I can't stand when I see like a 20-year-old girl and then I look at the writing credit and I know that she wrote that song with a 45-year-old man and basically he wrote the whole song. I hate that.
My name is Stephen Joseph Joshua Pultz. I'm 45 years old. I met Jewel in a coffee house in San Diego. She made me some chamomile tea or something, and so we started talking, and I thought she was really nice, and so we started writing all these songs together. I wrote this song with her called You Were Meant for Me, and it was funny because that song just hit 3 million radio air spins or something, and when we wrote it, we were in Mexico, and I remember I woke up and I was like, it was in the morning, I just picked up the guitar. And it was, I just, for whatever reason, started going, dream. See, that's why she sang it. Dreams last so long, even after you're gone. That whole hook part. And I know that you love me, and soon I know you will see you were meant for me, and I was meant for you. And afterwards, I remember saying, I don't like that song. You take that one. That song sucks.
Are you up for a challenge?
Sure.
Okay, say I'm a big label executive, but I'm asking you to write a song for a teenager, something that catches, something poppy, like a good hook, a good song that makes it easy, like Mama's Not Home.
I'm alone at home. I can hear the telephone. It's not you. Why don't you ring me up? Mama's not home tonight. Mama's not home and it's all right. Won't you come spend the night? It'll be all right.
Hi, I'm Taylor Hannah. I'm 17 years old. I go to Humble High School. I've been doing modeling part-time for about 5 years now. The filmmakers and I are just trying to show an example of how some of the pop stars are created today. It's a wonder I'm still standing with all the ways I've been knocked down. The inner girl is so dependent. That's a wave to hit the town. While I was recording my vocals, the band was laying down tracks next door. Don't you dare say maybe. Look right into my eyes.
No, you don't have to be able to sing. Just move your mouth and shit. They'll work that out.
With someone who's just like a girl who can dance and is pretty, I mean, it's already done, you know. There are like whole teams of people ready to move in on people like that.
All you do is show up with your long hair and your breasts and make sure your cleavage is down to here. At least we're going down to here now, because 2006 is butt naked Wednesdays.
So let's talk a little about technology and the music industry these days. So let me show you a little bit about how this works. We've got a vocal here, and you're going to listen to a little piece of a vocal, and when she sings the word eyes, you're going to hear a problem unless you're pretty tone deaf. And I don't mean that in an insulting way. Just check this out and you'll see what I mean.
Look right into my eyes. Look right into my eyes.
Okay, that's painful. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to go in and fix this with a plugin, like for instance, this one's called Auto-Tune. It'll basically look at her vocal, and you can tell it what key the song is in, and it'll go, oh, this should be at this pitch, and it's not, it's a little off, so I'm going to fix it in real time.
Look right into my eyes.
Pretty simple.
Yeah, background. Okay.
Roll playback. Roll camera.
Please don't tell anyone. I'm sure. I trust you completely. Okay. I'm ready. It's a wonder I'm still standing with all the ways I've been knocked down. Being a girl is so demanding. That's why I live to hit the town. Got my boyfriend on the phone. His mama's not coming home. I'm a woman now, fully grown. And I'm glad I found you. Can you take me, baby? Can I take you by surprise? Don't you dare say maybe. Look right into my eyes. Got my boyfriend on the phone. 'Cause mama's not coming home. I'm a woman now, fully grown. And I'm glad I found you. Oh baby, baby. Oh baby, baby. Mama's not coming home tonight. Mama's not coming home tonight. Mama's not coming home tonight.
Mama's not home tonight. Something like that.
Perfect. That's perfect. Could be a big hit.
They need to bring in different types of music. There's a lot of different types of music out there that aren't really advertised. And I think the radio sticks to a certain bias of music.
Radio's definitely got a problem today.
Yeah, I'm not too impressed with New York City radio. It's a little bit cheesy, you know.
You hear the same tunes over and over again.
If you turn on the radio and you hear the same songs repeated on classic stations or classic rock stations or on new, channels, you get inundated with this kind of repetition, and it almost kind of dulls your senses.
The 1996 Telecommunication Act changed the ownership limits. Before 1996, there was a limit on how many stations somebody could own, and that meant that there was going to be more different owners in a marketplace deciding how to program things.
I mean, since the Telecommunications Act, radio stations have been clustered into these giant chains.
Let me back you up just a little bit and tell you how Clear Channel came about. Headquarters of the company is in San Antonio. And years before they were the powerhouse that they are, there was a car dealer in San Antonio. The big car dealer and some of his business partners gave another business guy a loan to buy a radio station in San Antonio. They gave the guy the loan and he defaulted. So here they are, they're owning a radio station and not knowing anything about it. Before too long, they started to notice that these minutes of time, 60 seconds, was just like a unit, a car, a truck or an SUV or whatever it might have been. So as that grew, they liked the radio business a lot more than the car business. And they started buying stations. Their background is all Wall Street because all they see is units. Selling these units, how much can we get for these spots? And the advertising dollar is driving the entire company.
What's ended up happening now is, one parent company owns almost 1,240 radio stations, almost 1,200 stations more than they were legally allowed to have in 1996. And when people hear that, they know that 40 to 1,200, that's too much. And as soon as they could see that, they understood that something dramatic was taking place and something that they didn't want to happen in other areas of media.
If you have 500 radio stations and your sure model is sort of a bottom line kind of, well, this is kind of catchy and this is people will stay here and this is kind of entertaining, this is our model, and that's repeated over and over again because that's how we can be profitable, because that's what we care about is making the money, then you're going to make all the models look the same. You're not going to buy a radio station and say, well, you just keep on doing what you're doing because it seems to be working.
The thing that's really striking about radio now and radio consolidation is that you're very aware that things are not programmed for how much do you like them. They're programmed for, do you not dislike it enough that you won't turn it off?
This is one of the things that's so chilling, again, about, in my opinion, about Clear Channel and how they control so many stations, and it's clear that they don't even care about that anymore. They're not even going to play that game and act like there's any pretense of you listening to a local DJ. They do this thing called voice tracking, Clear Channel's famous for, where they'll get somebody to kind of go in and say, hey, New York, we love you. Yeah, and that makes it really local.
There are only certain demographics that are associated to the kinds of advertising revenue that can sustain the price points that they paid for these stations. So it's not an accident that, every big company that comes into a market wants to have their pop radio station, because that's where they see their real income and revenue coming in.
You got to sell your Coca-Cola and your Chips Ahoy and your Nabisco and your Super Deluxe tampons. And then you figure out how to fit the music in. And it better not be over 4 minutes long or they're gonna cut it.
If all you've got is a radio, you're hearing the same shit. That's all you're hearing.
I don't know, I just feel a little left out, I guess, because the stuff I grew up with isn't around at work. And there are, like say the classic rock stations or older stations, but they just play the same old, they'll play, they have like 2 songs in their playlist by Jimi Hendrix that they'll play, and they have maybe 3 by The Who.
Nah, you can't even find good music on the radio anymore.
I always just listen to CDs.
I honestly can say I haven't actually turned on the tuner in my radio at home for years.
And we're mentally killing, culturally killing the generation that's living now and going on by not giving them the kind of options that we had, of the kind of music that we could hear.
And radio is sort of in this little dance with the labels of, who do you want to pump this week? Who are we turning the switch on for this week? Give us the payola, we'll put it on, and then that's the menu.
The first thing that shocked me was this playlist thing. That was when I was like, what do you mean? We have to play this? We have to play this in this order? These same songs over and over?
People tend to pick things that are immediately attractive as opposed to things that might grow on you. You wonder whether a Bob Dylan hit would have ever been a hit if it was focus grouped.
But it's a very specific, limited playlist, and that's it. There's just like, that's it.
If you play something that's not highly recognized by the listener, you run the risk of the listener changing the station. So you constantly want to hit them with things that are familiar and test high. You know, we do music tests all the time. There's companies out there that's all they do. They'll walk in and we'll go, we've done a music test, here's your playlist.
And I would send these little notes to the program director and say, can we play this maybe? Or have you thought about this? And I would always get these, well, always. I would sometimes get a nice response. It was like, well, you know, we have these focus groups and we test out the music and this is really what people want to hear. And I would email back or write back, hey, can I be at one of those focus group things once and just be a fly on the wall and watch them? And it was funny how every time I ask, oh, you know what? You just missed one. Darn it all. Because we'd love to, they didn't want me to, if they really had them, they didn't want my ass in there.
It's amazing. I mean, they come in with 18-wheelers, they pull it off, they set up their own auditorium with chairs, and it's a big row, and people come in, and they're just all the way around, and they play songs. Did you kind of like it? Didn't like it? Hated it. And you just listen to little samples. And they have the demographic profile of everybody that came in the room, male, female, income.
If you ever want to guarantee yourself the wrong answer on anything, get 100 people in a room and have them vote on it.
I feel like it was Stalin or something that said something like, it's not who votes, it's how the votes are counted, right? So, like, I'm wondering, what are they being offered to choose from? Who makes that decision? I could never find out.
Do I think that people out there would respond to all sorts of different kinds of music if they were exposed to it? Absolutely. There's no question about it. But they're not given access to it.
I don't even know if half the tests are really going on, and I think they are used to justify the cesspool of crap.
It's music for the masses, you know. Even if you have the people that love music and are, God, I wish they would stop playing that song so much, I'm changing the channel. If the masses are staying, they're winning.
What'll end up happening is that that radio will in the long run suffer. It'll become sort of obsolete because what makes radio interesting, what makes it great, will just go elsewhere.
Clearly there is dissatisfaction with radio programming, or else Sirius and XM Radio, the two satellite companies, wouldn't have a business model, right? Their whole business model is that, you know, terrestrial radio is not serving you, so you need this more complicated radio that has more diversity.
Clear Channel didn't make radio. Radio made Clear Channel. But that's not the way that Clear Channel thinks about it. The excitement of the invention of radio, that energy will go somewhere else and find a place to blossom there. And probably something like Clear Channel would chase it down and find a way to explode it.
Has a focus on formula and quick returns caused the record industry to overlook talent and soul in favor of commodity? Is America missing out on some of its greatest musicians because they don't fit the model?
Running, yeah, yeah. Keep on running for my love. Some folks say that you're really, really fine. All you wanna be is just a friend of mine. But I know the man you're with gonna break your heart. And you'll be sad real soon.
Well, after I got dropped from Geffen, I basically played a few showcases, one at the Viper Room and one at Antone's. And my first showcase that I played with my new songs that I had written, Bruce Floor was in the audience, and he freaked out when he saw the show. He called me the next day and said, I love your music, I love everything about you, you're a huge star, can I pull the Brinks truck up to your front door? And I'll do that today, or tomorrow. Whenever you say yes, it's done.
I'm running for my love. I'm running, yeah, yeah. I'm running for my love. Some folks say that you're really, really fine.
I always believed that Doyle is what a rock star
should be. To me, Doyle is an icon waiting to happen. And I never looked at Doyle like, you know, man, we're gonna sell 1 million records and get rich. I looked at Doyle as somebody that would always have a career, would always do great things, would go in a bunch of different avenues. One time make a big guitar rock record, next time make an acoustic singer-songwriter record. Just kind of follow his lead, and 15 years from now, be wearing a black tux and clapping when he accepted his award into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. You know, that's why Doyle Bramhall frustrates me. Those were really great records. It wasn't that I thought that we missed a classic album or a hit single. What I am upset about is that we let go of an amazing artist. Very few guys like Doyle Bramhall exist out there today. Very few.
No.
You said almost dry.
Well, because in the back it's a little wet, but it's almost dry back there. Bruce was, he was a very cool guy, and I think he really, you know, he loved my music and he loved me as a person, and we were pretty close. So, you know, he didn't bullshit me too much. He said, I will fight as hard as I can with this label to, you know, get your next record out and to work it as hard as I can, but I'm gonna tell you right now that if you say yes and we go forward with this, which I am completely willing to do, so first of all, I'm not gonna be around.
They weren't able to stick with it and invest and see the long term. It was about right then and right now.
He said, I'm just telling you right now that they pulled all the money from your project. And all they're interested in is talking about making your third album. And I said, well, the outcome is not going to be any different because you've done this with 2 records. The label has done this with 2 records, so it's going to do it with a third record if there's not a hit on it. And I don't want to make a record with that in mind because it's just going to be a bunch of pressure. All my music is going to suffer because it's just going to be a compromise trying to make it sound the way I think this record label wants it to sound and the record president wants it to sound, and he knows more about Wall Street than he knows about music. So I just said, you know what, get me out of here, get me off this. If you can get me away from this label, I'll just, you know, I would be very happy. And he called me the next day and said, you're off. It was that easy.
I just kind of saw a shift in the music business. I realized that the promises I was making to the bands I was signing, I couldn't keep anymore.
He was dealing with me through this transitional period. His hands were tied. He could do nothing because the president and vice president of the labels were not letting him do anything.
The system wasn't allowing me to maintain the level of integrity that I thought existed.
The labels are looking for gimmicks now. I mean, they no longer cultivate artists. You know, there's no more artist development. Like, you know, like you said, 5-10 years ago, they used to, you know, develop artists and give them time to really find their way and find their own voice. Nowadays, it's like, all right, this is what people want to hear. They want to hear about rims. They want to hear about jewelry. They want to hear about this and that. So this is what you want to rap about, you know?
It's almost gotten to a point where a lot of frustrated and really talented people give up and leave because it seems like the industry really doesn't want country music anymore, and there's terms such as too country that exist. Too country, well, how can you be too country for country music? Alternative country is a great example. If you're traditional country, they'll call you alternative country. So what they're saying is that real country music is an alternative to country music. Makes no sense.
we are the last group of black musicians with a major record deal. You know, when I grew up, I knew all the members of War. I knew who was in the Commodores. I knew who was in Cameo. I knew who was in even the 80s. There were bands. There's Prince and the Revolution. There was Ready for the World. There were bands. There are no more black bands. Like, we are the last black band with a major record deal right now as we speak.
Record companies are no longer run by music people at the top. I think that's one of the factors in the situation.
Take Bruce Springsteen's career, somebody who I happen to admire. I always use him as an example, and when you read it in the print, it looks like I'm attacking him, and I'm not. So he makes Born to Run, and everybody loves it. And then his next 3 records are as far away from Born to Run as you can get. Now, if it were 2008 or 1998 instead of 1978, it would have thrown him out on his butt. Sorry, no hits, gotta go.
Right now, longevity is determined by how much money you make and how many fans buy your records.
The 20 million people that buy a Britney Spears record aren't music fans, they're a popular culture fan. So if your vision is more about reaching the people that really respond to music, that's a completely different business than the majors are in now. The majors used to be in that business, but they weren't majors then. They were just record companies, and there were hundreds of them. But now there's 4 of them.
You look at the parameters now, and most of the people that people talk about as being great, you know, Peter Gabriel or Sting or Bruce Springsteen, man, they wouldn't get a shot right now.
Most corporations run their financial lives based on quarterly earnings, and when that trickles down to a company that's developing talent, it puts a lot of constraints on the situation.
Companies were going public, and that they were beholden to the bottom line of this quarter. Did you make a big profit this quarter? Otherwise, our stockholders would be unhappy. That's completely different than the record company that I signed with. Warner's was a little family label, and their big sellers, Deep Purple and Black Sabbath, would pay for Ry Cooder and Randy Newman and me and Little Feat, you know.
Who's going to get signed are the ones that fit the existing formula, because they're the most likely to have a hit the quickest, the most immediately, and the most risk-free.
One of the things that worries me about the way people obsess over the stock market is that it now makes executives, whether in the music industry or otherwise, think short term, and a good executive shouldn't really have to do that. A good executive should be thinking about the long-term health of a business.
You either adapt to it or you get swallowed up. And now that I'm older, I see it. It's not so cut and dry as I used to like to think that it was.
Sadly, because our major record labels are now public companies, they don't have the luxury to do that, because boards of directors and owners, you know, stockholders, they want a return right now.
And you look up and everybody's saying, well, your quarterly earnings have to reflect this or we will fire your ass. Guess what? You either quit or you step in line. People get art and commerce mixed up. And once you can separate the two and see that art is art and commerce is commerce, and understand that this business is commerce, you know, then it makes that much more sense.
Mr. Eric Clapton is going to join us tonight.
All of my albums that I've made over the years have always seemed like failures, and I hadn't wanted to listen to any of my albums after I did them because they didn't do anything, and that to me was something that was instilled in me by the labels. You know, I could not enjoy these because they were flops. When Clapton called me, he had received a copy of my album from my manager, and he fell in love with it. He was on tour in Japan, but he called me and said, Jelly Cream is my favorite album in the last 5 years, and I love the songs, I love you as an artist. And, you know, that's where our friendship began, and it was just interesting because that lifted me that I had one of the most valid artists of all time saying this was a great piece of work. Just, it gave me a lift, and I think from that point on my self-esteem as an artist has been a lot better. You know, I'm really strong now.
I was astonished that anyone in this day and age was playing that way. I mean, it's like, oh, well, thank God, you know, some young guy is playing like that. And apart from that, there was the singing and the writing. So I wanted to meet him as soon as possible. And when I came to LA to do the B.B. King album, I asked him if he would like to collaborate on just play on the floor, and we'd work out how to do it as we went along, you know. I just wanted to meet him. And he's the real thing, you know. I mean, the first thing I noticed physically was he had Lightning Hopkins tattooed on his arm. And I mean, that's a serious commitment for a start, you know, and I just had tremendous respect for him from the word go. And he can play. He's a real player, you know. And there are only a handful blues players that are really the real thing.
I think in the early '70s, Doyle would have been a monster superstar. And it's not even to say that his music now sounds retro. It's just that it's not. You can't put it into one specific slot.
I wanted to tell him when he first started playing with me that I thought he ought to know that I'd never heard anyone like him too. It's like you know, at some point Stevie Ray stopped sounding like Albert King and sounded like Stevie Ray, and Doyle is the same. Nobody sounds like, he plays like nobody else, and yet it belongs in the genre, you know what I mean? It belongs in the genre, and yet it stands on its own. I mean, you can study all your life and still only know it intellectually, but he knows it from inside somehow.
When people like Roger Waters and people like Eric Clapton bless this guy as the heir apparent, do I feel vindicated? Absolutely. Does it make me feel any better? No way. Because then it just makes me realize if we would have stuck that much longer, who knows what could have happened.
So much for coming out tonight. We've had so much fun with all our guests, Luca and Eric. Thank you, Eric.
Trouble of this world, Lord, how soon we'll be done with the trouble of this world. I'm going home to live.
The people who were signing artists and running record labels in previous eras had the respect of artists. They could talk to artists about the nuts and bolts of music. They were often musicians themselves. They often understood the dynamic of how to make music that moves people. And those people were the John Hammonds of the world, say. Those people were very important to the development of these artists, and they understood that it takes time, it's not overnight, and they were willing to sort of very gently push instead of bark marching orders, which is what these people do now.
The great John Hammond had Aretha Franklin and made so-so records with her. Tried to make her a jazz singer, tried to let her handle standards. Wexler heard the part of Aretha Franklin that would be not just commercial, but would be great. And he did that by honing her for the radio. He did that by not trying to slot her into an old formula, but by realizing that she could do something new that would still jump out of the radio.
But you don't look for great artists when you're an A&R guy. Your primary goal is to keep yourself from getting fired. And the primary way to do that is to only take the calls from the prominent lawyers and other managers who you know are going to be able to leverage some other big act that they represent against you if you don't respond to a new act that they're shopping.
There became a fear element in the record business where everybody was so concerned about surviving that everybody had different agendas. You put 20 people in a boat, but everybody wanted a paddle.
I mean, the whole idea of A&R, artist and repertoire, that's what it means. In the 40s, Frank Sinatra would say, I want to do records. So these guys would run around and meet songwriters. And they'd get songs, and they like the songs, they bring them to Frank, say, Frank, do you like it? Frank would say, yeah or no. If he didn't like them, they ran out and get more songs. That's what an A&R guy did now. Now you have these people sitting around standing in judgment of talent. If they had the talent, they'd be singing or writing or playing. So, I mean, Stevie Wonder didn't need an A&R guy. Stevie Wonder said, here's my record. Thank you, Stevie. I mean, that was it. Prince, here's my record. That's A&R, man. You just, answer the phone, take the credit. I'm not against that. But the idea that there's some person in the middle who stands around real musician and is like the great dividing line between success or failure is just a joke. That's a total joke. That is one of the most useless jobs in the universe right now.
Virtually all of the important music that lasts, that lingers, that sells those 10 million copies of albums is not formula music. It's crazy music. It's the Pink Floyd Dark Side of the Moon. It's the Beatles. It's Led Zeppelin. It's stuff that was out there.
Like I was talking to one writer who said, well, man, I don't really hear anything new anymore. And I said, well, man, given the fact that Ornette Coleman was new and everybody hated it for 5 years, and Coltrane's sound came out and everybody hated it for 5 years, what you're saying is that, like, unlike all the other writers, if it was really new, you'd know it was new when you heard it and you'd love it. That's a hell of an assumption.
The quest for the instant hit means a quest for formula, and formula is short-lived.
Someone like Dave Matthews, I think, he probably changed the business more than Napster in a lot of ways. He changed the business model forever.
If you had asked people to listen to 30 seconds of Dave Matthews, they probably would have said, oh, this is lame. I haven't heard anything like this before. This is just, there's a violin in the band. Oh, what the hell is this? It's garbage.
You had a lot of people saying, this is not radio music. It's not going to do well.
We don't test very well in markets, radio markets, but then eventually they get on because people, after listening to the record for 6 months, call the radio and say, would you play that song again? I think one of the shortcomings in any kind of corporate, the standard corporate model is the bottom line becomes money, and then that I think it may be successful for a while, but I think it's dehumanizing, and I think it inevitably fails because it sort of eats itself.
When you go see someone and you know they are not going to stick to a script, that's electric, because we're in a culture right now where the script is all.
That energy, improvisation, making it up as you go along, I think is an essential part of life. It's what we do every day, you know, and or it's what we do on a good day.
Good music is timeless. Great music and great lyrics blow people's minds.
So a lot of times when you have something that is really new, you have to give people a while to catch up to it. Because if it's really new, the people won't like it, because they won't know what it is.
As the torchbearers of America's rich musical heritage fight for survival amidst the wreckage of what was once the record industry, what does the future hold? How will the next generation of great performers produce their music? How will they find their audience? How will their audience find them?
In the last 10 years, because computers have become so fast, and because there were some very ingenious companies that saw this processing power stepping up, basically with digital audio workstations and new technology, you can, for these days, God, for like $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, you could put a studio in your home that will rival what used to cost $1 million plus.
The fact that somebody can have a $1,500 laptop and a cheap copy of GarageBand and make music that satisfies them and satisfies the people that they know, as an end in itself, is a beautiful thing.
I mean, in a lot of ways, the new technology is even better. Because, like, for instance, if you go to, like, if I worked on a song personally 3 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, I can go to my computer and go, oh yeah, what about that song? Click, click, and the whole song, everything. All the EQ settings, compressors, reverbs, all of that stuff would come up. 12 years ago, when a big band would say, oh, we want to work on this song that we worked on 3-4 days ago, something like that, I'd have to break out this thick stack of notes and go through these notes and recall all the outboard equipment, all the stuff that's in the racks, and those big consoles that you see with the thousands of knobs on the console to get to where it was all twisted and set when you started a song. You have to hand twist every knob. And if you're super fast and somewhat caffeinated, it'll take you 45 minutes to 2 hours to do. And these days it's like double click. And it's amazing what you could do with this technology, and it costs so little. So for new musicians, bands, people trying to get their music out, it's a dream come true.
Now what we're seeing is an unleashing of creativity like we've never seen. An artist now can think of anything they can try and go for it.
At 9 a.m. it was 105 when I went looking for a place to hide. I went down to the edge of town, down to the riverside. Well, I got down to the riverside, and there was a man in a coat and tie, even though it was 105. Behind a brand new 10-foot barbed wire fence, his attorney by his side. We said, this river is spoken for, this river is spoken for, this river don't belong to you no more.
The day the music business changed, a good friend of mine named Clyde Lieberman, who worked as an A&R man for BMG Music Publishing, walked into my office and he said, "The music business is over. Let me show you something." And he typed in www.napster.com. He said, "Pick a song, any song." Ironically, I chose Estimated Profit by the Grateful Dead. We typed it in, downloaded it in about, 2 minutes, even with a dial-up connection. He said, "There you go, it's over." And I think that moment was when it really gelled for me that the business was never going to be the same.
One of the hardest messages to get across has been that piracy hurts artists. Consumers who are involved in peer-to-peer trading, they see this as a way to sort of get back at the music industry that's been ripping them off for years.
There's kind of a morality issue in the mind of the young music lover today that, downloading a song for free on the internet isn't really the same in that person's mind as walking into a record store and shoplifting a record. There seems to be some sort of, because that file of bits and ones and zeros that make a song isn't something you can hold in your hand, and therefore it's okay to steal it, if you want to define that as stealing.
Clearly, there's an industry in the middle there that got really used to people replenishing their collections, first from tape, then going, first you had 8 tracks and then cassettes and then you're going to CDs. You're talking about an industry that's been bloated by the luxurious opportunity to have the entire nation replenish all of their existing record collection on CD. I mean, the profits were just astounding. And you had an industry that got very used to that and created a whole universe, really, around those bloated profits that were really unrealistic.
The thing that we've come to discover in the world of widespread panic, as far as the live shows and, really the people that want a sort of questionable quality recording of a live performance are the same people who rush right out the very first day and will buy the studio record and then post on the internet that it's not quite as cool as the live versions.
They're worried about a dual disc and putting a DVD in a double, super, triple, uber cryptid thing that's so tight no one will ever be able to play it. It's crazy how much they've locked these things up. It's the opposite of what they should be doing. They should be giving it away. They should be podcasting like crazy, giving away U2 tracks, giving away Franz Ferdinand tracks, because people should want to buy the amazing $38.50 double CD that has outtakes and a DVD and a really cool poster, because their fans will buy that stuff.
was an interview with French composer Pierre Boulez, who was saying that every day we have to start new. We have to put away all of the music that we've come to love and know and start fresh. That's hard to do. That takes discipline, and it takes patience, and it takes a lot of energy and time to do that, whether it's going to a music store or turning on the dial and listening to new music. But I think it is a good message.
It rained the whole day, spent at his lover's grave. Said his goodbye, family and friends. Packed his things in a rusted car, rode it in the rain. And came upon a church in ruin with an old man dwelling within.
So much of what's happening now is bubbling up from below. It's like a grassroots revolution is taking place. If you go online to a place like purevolume.com or myspace.com, what's happening is this wonderful word of mouth thing, only it's writ large, it's a megaphone, it's millions of voices versus a teenager telling his best friend. You're telling hundreds and thousands of people at once.
We're at this ticklish stage right now where you still have the mega corporations, you still have the consolidated radio stations, but you also have the beauty of the internet in going around them.
Most independent artists and independent labels that I know embrace the internet because it's more exposure. And I think that most of those companies look upon new technologies, whether it be podcasting or file sharing, as a boon to what they do.
Will you stray, my friend?
Kids are not nearly as stratified in their taste as the music marketing machine tends to think it is. A friend of mine told me recently he's got a bunch of teenage daughters and he talks to them and their friends about music all the time. And the two dominant forms of music that these kids like, commercial country and hip hop. There's no marketing machine out there that makes that assumption. There's no marketing vehicle that I know of that makes that assumption. Shoot, CMT is a separate vehicle from MTV, and there's not a single video that would ever get played on both of those channels that I know of. Yet these kids will have Snoop Dogg next to Shania Twain on their iPods and not think a thing of it.
It's hard to find out about new music these days, I think. But with the internet, it's a big help for sure. I mean, there's so many different places you can go, websites, webzines like Pitchfork Media or Tiny Mixtapes that are talking about new music.
There's plenty of good music, it's just harder to find. It's harder to find because you're not hearing it on the radio. You're not hearing it on TV because that's not what's getting the spot, on the Jay Leno show or whatever. It's just a little bit harder to find. There's still 30,000 records a year that are being put out.
You can't underestimate what has happened with everybody buying an iPod. I know so many people who were huge music fans in college that kind of just for lack of time stopped going out and buying new music, and now they're looking for things to fill up their iPod. And the record labels, the major labels fought so hard against MP3s and anything that made sort of sharing music a lot easier. But what that's done is it's made people have so much easier time just to go out and find new artists.
Will you stray, my friend?
One thing about music lovers today, they smell fake a mile away. And that's what's not working anymore, is that kind of marketing and promoting where they say, this is hot, this is it, this is the next big thing. It's just not flying. And it has to come from another place that's more trustworthy and believable. And that place is going to be from the audience itself, not from the suits, that are trying to sell it to them.
top of their world. It's in the spring.
The proliferation of internet and radio really helps independent artists because if you're not happy with what the conglomerates are playing out there on your local station, you can go and find it, and there are great stations out there.
KEXP with the Music Matters, 90.3, 91.7, KEXP.org. English Beats, Save It for Later. Came out in 1983. The Arcade Fire, we thought of a good power out song for our friends listening in Villa Park, Illinois. Their power went out. They were listening on their laptop still. And Funerals, where you can find the neighborhood number 3 powers out. Brian Eno, Needles in the Camel's Eye starting off the set, and since the power did come back on as the song was on, they said you got to play that Go Team now. So here you go. The power's on, KEXP.
It's not really complicated. There's no tough formula. It's really simple. It's to get people who care about music, let them present the music, and folks respond to that. It's also not a radical notion at all, because this is the way radio used to be, right? Back in the 70s, where the DJ, God forbid, had a role in shaping the sounds that you were hearing.
To be a radio station like KEXP is difficult if you weren't already a radio station. There's plenty of internet startups, but there's also all kinds of ASCAP fees, and there's all kinds, even the music itself you have to pay for, so it's hard for them to start up. It's the perfect storm for us. We have the technology of the University of Washington. We had seed money from Experience Music Project, which allowed us into these studios and gave us a running start into becoming self-sufficient. And we have the most passionate, loyal audience on earth.
If you take a bird's eye view, you have to become less concerned about the geographic boundaries. This is less about markets, and it's really more about a community of shared interests. This is like a tribe.
Our audience is a music-loving audience. So with music lovers come music fans who aren't going to love everything we play.
We select music from scratch. We scour the earth, and that takes a lot of time. You've got to be willing to spend that time to find that jewel, find that music with merit.
It might be hard to listen to a station like ours. You've been programmed differently all your life. It's hard to suddenly stop and think about what you're listening to. Some people don't want to think about it.
Come on, say wait a minute, Queen, what's your name? I be that gift that flip the life game from the right brain. Hold on. Ascension maintain, hold on, rolling through like a burning flame, come on, like a supernova star. She be the light when they in the dark morning. The moon past the sun before constellations start forming. Hold on, a cross up in the sky, hold up, but motherfuckers wanna ask me why, come on. What good do your words do if they can't understand? Yeah,
Music is bigger than religion, it's bigger than politics, it's bigger than pretty much everything. My whole, mission for Control Freak is to start to move or help to usher the planet into a more positive and beautiful place to be.
Now artists understand that they actually run a business and they're building a brand. That business is their career, the brand is themselves or their band.
I come from a world of hustlers. So I grew up watching everybody on their hustle, and I don't knock the hustle. So what we have to do is figure out how do we merge together to form our own companies so that we are the record label and not the artist. I'm not anti large label. I'm not, because this is the reason why I have a house and a car and my mom and them doing good. I just think what shouldn't be done is that you leave all of the business up to someone that you hire. You should be a part of it because you are your business.
When the idea of ATO Records started, we realized at that point we had built an infrastructure up where we were performing a lot of the duties of a record label on our own. We were already doing them for Dave Matthews Band or other artists that we managed.
The philosophy was to build a business from its content and not for the sake of money. We'll have an office, and then, well, what the hell are you doing? Then you have to find something. And that was David Gray, because right around that time he was dropped.
We all loved David Gray. We all loved all 3 of his records. And lo and behold, I got a call one day.
Some group of scaredy cats dropped him because they didn't know what to do.
It was pure coincidence. And that day I talked to his manager, and a few weeks later, Michael and I were over in Ireland seeing David, and we got a deal done quickly.
And he'd already made a record. It was we had that White Ladder. It was like, wow, please let us be your, please let us represent you, please. So I was begging him. And eventually, after we argued for a while, he said yes. And then it exploded.
The real essence of ATO, I think, was simply that, to get behind music that we felt extremely moved by and that we felt deserved to be heard more.
We all have the confidence that we'll succeed. And I think it's because our goals are realistic and our expectations are realistic, and we're not trying to employ 180 people. We're employing 11, and we're not signing 37 acts, we sign 9. And we know that it takes 6 months before you even hear the artist's name, and another 6 months before you actually go buy it.
I definitely get caught up in like a control freak sort of mentality about the music and the band. Like, I want it to be ours and I want to do everything, but I reached a point where I realized that we need other people to help us, you know what I mean, do what they do, so we don't have to do everything, and they're great.
Kind of lucked out, with RCA and ATO, because I feel like, who knows how long it'll last, but I feel like we've been given a chance to make records, and they let us make the records that we wanted to make, and didn't say anything, and are willing to let it succeed or fail on our own terms, which is pretty cool and almost never happens anymore.
I was given this opportunity to, get out of the record business and into the music business. And that's what ATO Records is for me. It's the music business. And from where I sit, coming from a major label to ATO, the music business is extremely healthy.
I got my foot in the door in 1971 when I made my first album, and part of the reason I got my foot in the door is because I play guitar pretty good for a girl. That was the thing that made me different. It wasn't like I was gorgeous or wanted to have a hit single. The times were different. You could be a modest selling artist without aspirations to be a star and still get a record deal. And things have changed to where you could do that again. You just have to figure out what you really want. If you want to be Britney Spears, then you better get a manager and work on your dance steps and get some, body adjustments so that you can dance that dance, But what I tell people that are more in my line of work, blues artists or folk artists or, people that are hybrids like I am, is to just pick a career that you think is going in a direction that you see yourself having some affinity for, some similarity. And take a look at the record label, take a look at their management, take a look at whether they own their own publishing, get their legal representative to, approach those people, see if they'll handle you. If they say, no, we already have a Shelby Lynn, we don't need another one, but at least you've got a model and see how they did it,
I think it's very important for new bands to socially, they have to understand that it's important for them to have a camaraderie besides just business. Most bands just get together when it's time to discuss, or we need a band meeting. I don't like the way you're playing your bass. Or, discussing business things like splits and points and those type of things, and when's rehearsal, and why were you late, and you have a problem, that type of thing. I say if you want to stay together, Sunday. Every band out there, Sunday is band day. That's the day that you're gonna choose nothing. Whoever's the best cook in your band, that person's gonna make breakfast. You guys go over there, you have breakfast. That is the ritual that has kept my group together for 16 years. And Lord knows, if there are 7 people in this world who should be bickering at each other, it should be us. But at the end of the day, we're still here. We're still here. So that is direct. I could say, follow your dreams and hang in there. No, I'm giving you direct instructions. Sunday is going to be bowling night. Sunday is going to be breakfast day. All of you alternate. Sunday is going to be movie day. You don't have to go to movies. It's raining outside. Okay, great. Watch Raging Bull at someone's house. Serve turkey sandwiches, whatever. Sunday is going to be band day. That is going to be a very, very important thing that you guys mesh together as human beings before you even do it as a band.
What have you learned from your students, if anything?
What I've learned from my students is that students today are completely full of shit. That is what I've learned from my students. Is that much like the generation before them, the only thing they are really interested in is you telling them how right they are and how good they are. That is the same mentality that basically forces Harvard to give out B's to people that don't deserve them, out of the fear that they'll go to other schools that will give them B's, and those schools will make the money. We live in a country that seems to be just in this massive state of delusion, where the idea of what you are is more important than you actually being that. And it actually works as long as everybody's winking at the same time. And then if one person stops winking, you just beat the crap out of that person, and then they either start winking or they go somewhere else. But it's like, yeah, my students just, all they want to hear is how good they are and how talented they are. And they're not really, most of them aren't really willing to work to the degree to live up to that.
If the first thing you're thinking about is getting famous, then don't worry about it. Don't just go and get famous then, because I don't know how to do that. When the band started, I started feeling something about music that made me almost just not care at all if we got famous. I didn't care if every record company that we met, we started just saying, I don't care. If the record company's coming to meet you guys, well, fuck them. They can come or they're not come. I don't care. If they want to buy us dinner, they can buy us dinner. You know, and that was how we felt about them. And that's why we took our time getting signed. It was like, you know, the people were coming. Every time a record company walked into the room and say, we really think we can do something for you. I say, well, then you should go away, because I don't think you can do anything for us. Because as you can see, without you, we're making money, and we're doing fine. And so that was what drove us. And so I think my advice would be to aspiring musicians is find a way to do what you love to do. Because then if you find a way to do what you love to do, then it doesn't really matter if you get paid to do it. Then you can have your whole life wrapped around it and work in a coffee shop. You know, and then if you're lucky, maybe you can make a living at it. And then if you're lucky and you work hard, maybe you can make a lot of money doing it. But if that's your goal, then you really shouldn't do it. There's a lot, if your goal is money and fame, there's a lot easier ways to do it. Go on Fear Factor, you know. If you want money. If you want to play music, all you gotta do is play it.
Do anything you want to do. But from here, music is a thing from the heart, from the soul, just like anything else you do, man. And you can be the best, you can be what you want to be. That's right, you can do what you want to do. I believe I'm a blues player. I've never been a millionaire, but let me tell you something, I think I am. Because I got this. I got what it take. I don't care if you don't believe me, man, but I know you do, because this is what it's all about. When you got your instrument, anything you do, you want to do it and you love it, you rich. You're a millionaire, man. And I love what I'm doing.
There are three kinds of artists. The first kind of artists are the ones who hurt to do what they do. It hurts to write. There's pain involved, there's experience, and there's blood. The second kind of artist is the kind that imitates the ones in pain. And the third kind of artists are the kinds that just do what somebody tells them to do. Learn this step, wear this wig, shake your ass, watch yourself, you know. The first kind of artists are the ones who are more popular than the amount of money they receive. The second kind of artists are generally the rich ones. And the third kind of, they get dropped from the label because it's a million of them walking around.
Tomorrow's musicians face an uncertain future. The institutions that supported yesterday's great artists are gone or rapidly changing. And yet, there are now more and better tools for making music and more avenues for distribution than anyone ever imagined. One thing is certain, they won't succeed without support. Our children won't learn about our rich musical history unless we teach it to them. Tomorrow's great ones will remain in obscurity without our help. It's up to each of us as music fans to support them, to encourage them, to make sure that music never dies.
There's a lot of dumbing down going on, but I don't think that we need to panic. I think we just need to teach our children well.
Never like nobody that's been mean to me.
It comes from passion. It comes from a belief in what you're doing. Not the belief that people are going to love it, but that you love it.
You know, if you're sitting in a room with a guitar or a piano trying to write a song, you're just trying to get that feeling or that idea across to yourself so it makes sense and trust that somebody else can understand it.
I'm a fool for you. I'm a fool for you. Fool for you. I'm a fool for you.
I'm in the best place that I've ever been in my life because I've spent enough time away from major labels. I don't have anybody telling me what I should be as an artist. And I've been able to create my music and write songs every day and hang out with my family, and there's nothing more beautiful than getting to hang out with my daughters and my wife.
You go on and use me so continuously. I don't know why I love you like I do when you're breaking my heart and you know it's true.
There's always going to be people who just want to hear great music, and they want to see that spark of genius that occurs on stage that they themselves can't do. And those are the people that I admire, the people that can do that, and those are the people that I pay money to go check out.
Don't get me every day, but turn, I'm here to stay, and I'm a fool for you.
For the musicians who are true to themselves, no matter how big your platform or how bright your spotlight, the Most High hears your song. And it's because of you that the world goes round. And don't be fooled. Be you. And don't let anybody infiltrate your dream. And make sure you're saying something when you saying something. You know, it's just important to sound like you, to feel like you, to be like you.
Yeah, yeah.